everyone, welcome. Thanks so much for tuning in. I'm Sadeghi, Senior HR Business Partner at Workleap. And joining me today is Hebba Youssef, founder of I Hate It Here and Chief People Officer at Workweek. Hebba, so glad to have you here with us.
So happy to be here. It's my first trip to Montreal.
Oh, sorry about all the snow.
I'm a little excited about it because it's kind of warm where I was. Like I left and I wasn't even wearing a coat. So I had to like carry my coat onto the plane. I was like, I don't know if I'll need this. And I got here and I was like, thank God I brought my coat because it's kind of cold.
Yeah, and we've got another few months of this, lucky us. So, yeah. So, today we're going to be talking about something that I love to talk about, which is performance and how it actually works in organizations. More specifically, though, we're going to be diving in on what it ends up measuring, why it often breaks trust, sadly, and what are some small changes we can make to help improve the outcome.
Yeah, I can't wait. My first newsletter ever, no, my second newsletter ever that I wrote in 2023 the headline was, Does Performance Management Actually Measure Performance? And my fun fact was that it like trended on this like tech blog called Hacker News, which I don't know if anybody on earth even reads Hacker News, but I was like, oh my God, the tech people are talking about my newsletter because I wrote out how I thought most performance management processes were completely broken. And the response from engineers were like, yeah, it is. Like what she's saying is so true. We can't believe an HR person is saying this out loud.
Absolutely. I spend a lot of time thinking about this particular topic, and not just as an HR practitioner, but also as someone who works in an HR tech company. And so many organizations struggle with their performance process. They know that it's not working the way that it should, but it is hard to fix it. I mean, it's overwhelming, right?
Yeah.
What do you think about that?
We're like conditioned to want performance reviews, which is so weird to me. I'm like, where did we fall into like corporate America trap of like wanting a review? Because when we started at Workweek with our performance management process, we didn't do reviews for like a full year. We only did like practicing giving feedback downward and upward for a full year before we did our first review. And what prompted that first review was an employee came to us and said, I really want a review. And I was like, but you're getting regular feedback from your manager every 2 weeks. Like, why? And she said, I really want it on record about my performance. And I think that the case for like a lot of employees is they want some sort of paper trail that says like, look, I'm doing a good job. And then we've just conditioned to want the review, even if the review doesn't give us the good outcome of like real actionable feedback.
Absolutely, yeah. They want the recognition, right? You mentioned earlier that traditional methods don't actually measure performance. So, what would you say it measures instead?
Someone's perception of you most of the time, which is like usually clouded by sometimes proximity bias and recency bias. The recency bias, I think, more than ever, especially if your review is like a once a year. Like if you're running an annual process, I won't say it's bad. I just don't think it's good because a lot of times in the annual review, people haven't been keeping track of the feedback through the whole year. So they get to that annual review and they only remember like the last 2 weeks to a month. How can you assess my performance over a year if you can only remember the manager or anyone assessing me can only really remember the last month?
Absolutely, yeah. And we'll talk a bit more about those biases. And it's interesting because when I hear people describe what's broken with the system, I rarely hear them talk about the mechanics. Oftentimes, it's about how they feel. So that feeling of I was surprised by the rating, or I got feedback I wasn't expecting, or I was surprised by a promotion decision. And over time, those feelings of surprises are actually what end up turning into the belief that performance is arbitrary, dare I say even political.
Yes. Yeah.
We all know about that. And it's almost like as if it's all about who's got the most visibility or who's got the strongest manager in their corner. And so that's actually what ends up turning into disengagement. Not so much that performance itself is hard, but that it feels unpredictable. And so when the system can't explain itself, think that's sort of where the trust starts to collapse.
Oh my god, trust is such a big thing because I think, like, the average worker, if I were to, like, run a survey, I would not be surprised if the average worker said they did not trust their manager, their leadership team, or their HR team. And I think sometimes the processes we build in HR actually do more harm to trust than help build the trust. And I think performance review processes in their antiquated ways is one of the things that harms the trust the most. And ultimately, at the end of the day, like that trust is the foundation of everything. It's the foundation of a good relationship with your manager, leadership, your company as a whole. And so I think like when we're building the processes in HR, we have to ask like, is this something that is going to diminish the trust of the employee in what we're trying to do here. And I think a lot of performance management processes, that is the case of what happens. It's why people feel the need to game the system or play a game of politics. And I'm the worst at it. Like, I'm not a good political game player. I'm just like, I don't have the energy in my soul to play this game. I just want to show up, do good work, and be appreciated for the work I'm doing. Why do I have to worry about if so and so likes me, if so and so thinks I'm talented, if maybe they are not directly responsible for my growth anyways?
Yeah. And to me, we're talking about feelings right now, but these are usually not the root of the problem, right? Like they're symptoms of a deeper issue around the way that performance is structured, run, and reinforced in an organization. So if we were to strip away those feelings and, look at it to sort of zoom out, where do you see the process breaking down most often?
I do not think people give good feedback. It is not natural. Like, think about you and your life throughout your entire life. Like, did it come naturally the first time you gave feedback to someone?
No.
Exactly. Where you're like, you're gonna yeah, you're like, "Should I say this? Is this even relevant? How do I make it an example that they know and it's just not my feeling, it's a real thing?" We're just, like, not instinctively good at giving feedback, and it's like a learned trait. I think, like, I've been managing for almost 10 plus years, and I still think every single day I get a little better at giving feedback. It's like a muscle you constantly have to work all the time, and so I think most performance review processes break down because people want the feedback, but they don't actually know how to give it. Or like in this current reality, people are just using AI to write the feedback. I think AI can like help you with the feedback, but just to write it verbatim and for your manager to read it, I think the average person is like, what is happening here? This doesn't feel natural or good.
Yeah, it's skill. Like you said, it's a muscle that we have to keep working on. Um, Now, to me, I think that when we talk about designing a good system, a good process, uh, I think we often forget that performance doesn't just live in a process or some framework that's documented somewhere, right? Like it's a living thing that you bring in your day to day.
Yep.
And who plays a really big role in that? Managers, right? They're the ones that bring that system to life in the way that they set expectations, clarify priorities when things change, raising the bar. So when I think of, designing that right system, I can't help but think that I can't talk about one without talking about managers because even the best system is going to fall apart if you're not setting those expectations, if you're not giving the feedback
Yeah.
along the way, right?
Yeah.
So I know that in the past you've mentioned that performance problems are system problems first, that we talked about, manager problems second. So I'd love to know what would you say are like the best managers have in common when it comes to setting those right expectations and having those right conversations?
What a loaded question. I think I should talk about this forever because, like, there was this article that came out last year that said, like, your manager has more of an impact on your mental health than your partner. And I'm like, your partner, the person you are at home with every day. This manager who I'm with 8 hours out of a day has more of an impact on our mental health. So I thought about that very deeply because I was like, that worries me. Managers are, I feel, under-resourced often. They're thrust into this job. They're told to give feedback, but without actually understanding the feedback. They're told to set expectations, but expectations also don't come easily either. It's not like natural to be like, hey, so here's what I expect of you. So you kind of have to teach managers. And I'll tell you a funny story. I have a manager that I was working with a few weeks ago in my organization, and she was working through a problem with like a direct report. And she was like, I need to like set expectations better. And how do I do this? And I was trying to give her tips for how to do that. And I said, do you have a meeting or like a stand up? And do you say, like, here's kind of what I'm expecting you'll get done this week? Or when you're slacking, you're saying, hey, these are the three priorities that I'm thinking about this week. Like, where do they land for you? Will these get done? And she said to me, and I laughed really hard about it after the fact. In the moment, I was a little offended. She was like, "It feels very boomery to say this is what I expect of you." And I was like, first of all, my soul just died a little bit, like, "What?" And then I, like, really tried to explain to her, I was like, "In an organization, we all have to set expectations, like, no one is absolved of it. In fact, the only person I could think of would be maybe my CEO because he manages executives who have more working experience in the thing that they are leading than he has. So he relies on them differently, but our job as managers always is to be setting expectations, is to be clear about it every day. And like I have a weekly stand up with my direct report where we talk about what we're getting done in the week. But it took me a long time to learn that. And what made me learn that was I trusted my team to get things done. I didn't tell them what they needed to get done. I didn't talk about the priorities. I was like, they know. They know what they're going to get done. Then we started missing our goals. I started having questions being asked of me like, why did your team not get this done? Why did they not hire these people on time? Why are we behind on running this performance review process? And that's where it really crystallized for me in my career that, like, expectation setting is, like, a daily thing we have to be doing. But, again, it doesn't come naturally. So we have to teach our managers, like, we as HR, we play a big role in learning in our company, but I think we enable so much performance simply by teaching people how to actually build up to high performance.
Absolutely. I mean, there's when we think about it, there's actually so many opportunities for managers and team members to link up and exchange the feedback. It's a two-way street, right? It's not a monologue, it's a dialogue. And so by the time you get to those reviews, like I said, there's so many other moments where you should have already shared feedback and made those expectations really clear. So we talked a little bit about, what are the best things managers have in common. On the flip side, where do you think where managers get stuck the most? Do you think it's more like, I don't know, in the feedback giving, in the calibrations with their peers? Is it the time that it takes? I don't know, maybe all of.
I think it's all of it, honestly, like, feedback given, feedback received. Imagine if managers got better at receiving feedback about how to be a good manager. So, like, we do the upward and downward process at Workweek because we wanted to make sure that direct reports had the opportunity to tell their manager, "This is what I need from you," because that doesn't come instinctively. Like, even when you think about friendships or, like, romantic partnerships, how often are you telling your friends, like, "Hey, I need this from you. I want you to do more of this and less of this." Like, I don't think it's, like, a natural habit we all have. Not that we're all people pleasers, but just that I think these conversations are, like, more nuanced than the average person knows how to have when it comes to performance. So I think managers really there's a gap on receiving the feedback, but also I just think, like, delivering it in an actionable way, so many people struggle with that. Like, back to your feelings point, a lot of people give feedback based on how the action made them feel. Whereas good feedback would be, here's a thing you did and the impact, and here's what I want it to look like moving forward. And so many people miss that entire thing and are more so, you made me not feel good. You made me mad when we missed the deadline because you didn't do the thing I told you to do. So I just think it's like reworking our managers' minds around is this is a core part of their job. It enables so much. It builds the performance of your individual team and company and helping give them the stuff that they need to do that. Tools, resources, like you can't just set them free and say they'll figure it out. And I think they need our help. They just don't really know how to express that a lot of times.
Yeah. And you mentioned, sort of linking it to personal relationships, friendships, those already have trust, but they were years in the making, right? So it's the same in any working relationship. So you sort of have to get to know one another's standards, expectations, language. And in order to do that, you need to give really clear, actionable feedback, as you said. And one misconception I actually find kind of funny is that oftentimes when we get to those official reviews, people think that that is, well, a few things. One, they think that it's the moment to judge, evaluate, give a rating. There's too much emphasis on the rating part, when in fact, this is a moment to align. This is a moment to kind of look at performance and goals for that quarter or however the cadence is, and sort of also look forward, not just focus on past performance, but moving forward. What does that quarter look like? What support do you need? And what does good look like moving forward? And another thing I find is interesting is um, people tend to see those reviews as the moment to reveal performance.
Yeah.
When that's the time to confirm what you already know. You should not be revealing anything at that point. You should be confirming things that has already been said. And again, there should be no surprises. It should really be more like a summary of all the latest feedback that you've also been receiving. And I'm sure you've had similar feedback from your organization.
My, like, biggest fear is somebody gets to a review and they are surprised by anything being said. In fact, that's, like, written in all of our documents. I, like, write a guide for our managers before they even do reviews on, like, how to give good feedback, or I walk them through, like, here's how to think about feedback. If you're gonna reveal anything that you have not already talked to them about in a performance review, you have failed, full stop. Like, it's, like, in all of our documents. I'm like, "This is not the time to come into a situation that's already a heightened emotional situation." Like, I hear the word review and I like tense up a little bit. So we've like tried to call our process like reflections, like mid-year check-in, end of year reflection, because I think review has like a negative connotation and then people like really tense up. So it's already a tense situation. Why would you ever reveal something new in a tense situation? Like, could you imagine coming into something and just being like, "Well, I was really disappointed by your feedback." Like, like, you're not gonna do that.
Surefire way to break trust is do that.
Ruin it, and that's, like, a terrible thing that happens to a lot of people. Like, I imagine people watching this interview are thinking right now, "I have been surprised by performance." I have. Like, I've had a manager do that to me, and it really wrecked our trust. Like, I didn't wanna work with them much longer, and I ended up leaving the organization because I felt like it was really a disservice to me and our relationship to wait to reveal something that felt like it could have been a real conversation we could have had way before the review.
Yeah. And that reaction is actually good feedback for leaders. It oftentimes when I'm talking to managers, I ask them, if ever there was a conversation I knew was going to be difficult, I'll ask them how did it go? And if they say, the person was surprised, shocked, or weren't expecting it, to me, that's good feedback for the manager, meaning at some point you've missed that particular point where they maybe should have. Maybe you said it, but you weren't clear enough. Maybe you didn't say it often enough, but their reaction is good feedback for you to know that, okay, obviously we're not on the same page on this. What could I do differently in the future so that we can be more on the same page in a more timely manner and not only when we get to the review part?
Yeah, when managers come to me with a performance problem, the first question I ask is, "What feedback have you given them to date?" And if they cannot show me some sort of written feedback or point to a conversation where they addressed something, I'm like, we're starting back at zero. So this is not a performance problem. This is actually a manager problem. You, the manager, need to go discuss it with the direct report. Let me give you a framework and a script for you to use. And so managers now know when they come to me, all my managers will be like, I've had 3 performance conversations. I have it documented here. Here's what I told them. Here's what they did. I'm like, okay, so now we have learned a performance problem is not an individual problem if they have not gotten the feedback they need. And I think when I think of reviews, my issue with reviews is like they feel so moment in time. Like it's like one moment, December you were getting a review or January you get a review. And I think the average performance day to day of an employee and even myself, it's more like this. It's like a sign. I don't, and that's not a sine wave, right? I was not good at math. It's like this, it's like up and down, like, some days I am a 5 out of 5. Other days, I will be honest, I'm a 1 out of 5. And so if performance is more of this, up and down, it changes day to day, when you anchor in a performance review to a moment in time rating, I think it, like, underserves the employee quite a bit. Because then they start to feel like, "Well, I'm a 5 right now, but I was a 3 the other quarter, and, like, maybe I'll be a 4 next quarter." They're not really thinking about It's okay that your performance can change day to day. It's that you are digesting the feedback that you are getting and you're actively moving forward with the feedback.
Yeah. And again, it just leaves too much emphasis on the rating part when that I'm not saying it's not important because obviously there's a lot riding on the rating that you receive, your growth, your promotion, your pay. But the feedback is the gold part of those conversations. It's the area where you can get the coaching and the growth and know exactly how you can excel. And so I think it's a disservice when there's just too much emphasis around the number or the label of the rating when in fact it should be around the overall feedback, both good and constructive.
I will say something maybe potentially controversial. I have like a love-hate relationship with numerical ratings. Even when you explain what the number means, I think we people tend to overinflate their performance and managers tend to not quite know everything that goes into person what they're doing every day, so they tend to rate them lower, is what I've historically seen. At Workweek, which was wild, we actually had our employees rate themselves lower than the managers rated them, and my CEO was like, "Why do you think this is happening?" And I was like, "I don't know." Like, historically, across every industry I've worked in previous companies, usually the managers rate lower than the employees, but we've done a really active job of telling our employees, like, we have a 4-point scale, so we'll be like, "Hey, it's okay." Like, 3 means you're doing your job and you're doing it well. Like, that's okay. Even when I talk about the ratings, I'm like, I give myself a 3 every quarter. I'm doing my job and I'm doing it well. On the quarter where I will go above and beyond, sure, I'll give myself a 4. But like a lot of people would say, well, I'm always going to give myself a 4 out of 4. And so I tend to hate the ratings because I feel like we've conflated that rating with so much more. And the narrative feedback actually could be more beneficial than knowing if you're a 3 or a 4.
Yeah, absolutely.
But I don't know how we divorce ourselves from that.
Also psychologically, I mean, if we just think like pure marketing wise, the way the human mind works, like we have a 5-point scale and like a 3 is still great because you're meeting expectations. And if you're in a really, ambitious company where standards are high, 3 is great. If my manager says, hey, I have really tough, high standards. You are meeting those expectations. You're doing a great job. That sounds great. But if you say 3 out of 5, psychologically, that just doesn't visually land as stellar for me. And so I agree. The numerical part is no one's
We
favorite.
are all the star in our own stories. I am the leading lady of my story. So, like, when you get to a review and suddenly you are not getting that attention that you think you so done, you're going to feel a way about it. In fact, human nature is when someone gives you feedback, your first reaction is usually always defensive because your guard comes up. Oh, wait, I'm not as great as I think I am. Like, it happens. Just observe yourself the next time you get feedback. It is, you instantly like defense. You have to train yourself to fight through the defenses and get to the good stuff, which is the feedback. But if the relationship is broken, if your manager is bad at giving feedback, if you're only thinking about ratings, do you think you're ever going to be able to push past that defensive layer?
Right.
I think it becomes really hard. And like back to the trust, like if there's no trust, how are you ever going to figure out what it actually takes to like be whatever number you want to be or be the best version of an employee at your company?
Yeah. Again, it goes back to what we were saying that it's those little surprises that over time break the trust and turn those feelings into a concrete belief on the individual's part that this is unfair and undeserving. And so it makes it difficult for them to go past the the good part of the feedback and accept it and receive it. And it's unfortunate because some of it is probably good for them to know about themselves. They can leverage that and take that with them throughout their career. But when you're hung up on your feelings because you feel like the process has been unfair, the people involved are being unfair, then it becomes difficult to see past that. Now, we talked a lot about, the different roles involved in designing a good system, but let's actually talk about what a good system looks like. So, for viewers who, let's say, are looking to redesign from scratch, what would you say are some non-negotiables to start with?
Ooh, systems that only do if we're just talking in systems, like something that's like moment in time, like you're only doing annual or biannual, and there's no means to capture ongoing feedback. I think like the goal of performance management should be that feedback becomes something that you do constantly. It doesn't need to happen like every month, every 2 weeks. It becomes a daily habit of everybody, and that there's still a system and a process in place for you to write that stuff down. Because like we forget half the things that we say. Like people have to hear things 5 to 7 times to even remember them. So I'm like there has to be some sort of system of record too that you can keep track of what you're talking about back and forth. A lot of employees sometimes feel like that's icky. They're like, oh, it's like I have to do this for HR. And I would love to reframe it to them like having a system and record in place where like you can track your feedback and put it somewhere is actually like super powerful for the employee. Cause then you can say, look at everything I did. Look at me 6 months. Like 6 months ago, you told me I need to be more strategic. 6 months later, I'm like launching and leading projects from start to finish with like the overall business goals weaved into my projects. Like that should be there. So I think like having some sort of system that enables an ongoing feedback is super important.
So, what I love about what you were saying earlier, Hiba, is that you're moving performance away from just filling out forms towards making decisions. And when we think about making decisions, obviously we want them to be as accurate as possible. And to me, that's sort of where AI comes into the picture, right? And you talk about having the right inputs to make those accurate decisions. So, let's talk a little bit about AI. And I want to be really intentional about this because it can have a really powerful impact when it's involved in a process. So let's start with how AI can be used in a good way throughout the performance process.
Yeah. Back to my like love hate relationships with ratings. I have like a love hate relationship with AI. I understand how it can be leveraged well. I just worry sometimes that people don't leverage it correctly, right? So, like how it should be used in a performance process is to potentially help surface insights and pull things out of ongoing feedback and summarize. Potentially, maybe you have 6 months of ongoing one on ones and you really want like a good summary of it. That's an excellent use case of AI. Going to ChatGPT and putting in, "My employee's underperforming, what should I say to them?" And then copying and pasting that into a review is the worst situation of using it. And so I think, like, where you said AI can be powerful, it's using it to, like, summarize, get insights, pull things together, pull out things that you might have even forgotten, right? Like, we only remember the last, like, 2 weeks to a month of feedback. Maybe I had a conversation 8 months ago, and it's somewhere in my notes and I don't remember, and I wanna celebrate the thing that they did 8 months ago, but I forgot it happened. So, like, AI, great to do that. Where I would never use it, just to copy paste it to give someone feedback because it's not trained on how you would say it. It's also not trained on your company values or your company's way of giving feedback. So potentially you could miss the mark a lot by like over relying on AI. But I think like if we're thinking of it as a partner in the process, it can be so powerful.
Yeah. You touched on a really important part for me, which is that AI should never be used to replace that human responsibility. So the focus should always be that it's the humans that are owning the decisions, not the model or an AI agent. As soon as it starts to dive in from support towards being involved and replacing the human judgment and making those decisions for us, that's where I think AI is a bit of a no-go and should not be involved in performance or really any other
I'm
system.
gonna agree. One time I was talking to a CEO about like the role of managers and how they were gonna evolve. And he was like, I don't know, maybe like someday like AI could just be your manager. And I was like, why would I want AI to be my manager? Like that's like AI should help. It should be a help, a support. It should pull things out that like you cannot remember because you have a million things going on. It should never replace. Like, and when people advocate for it to be a replacement, that's where I really get worried because I'm like, we don't even, this technology is changing and evolving so rapidly every day that to me, for it to replace something entirely is just not feasible. And I think, like, back to what we've been saying the whole time, trust, we are also conditioned to know like how AI sounds now that I think if a manager copied and pasted something from like a ChatGPT or a Copilot or any Gemini, any of them, just directly into a review, I do think employees are smart enough to be like, wait a minute, AI wrote that, my manager did not. And that trust, good luck getting it back at that point. Like it's already a stressful time. Maybe you don't have a good relationship with them. And now you're outsourcing the most important part of your job, giving performance feedback. That trust is lost.
Yeah. It shows when you're using it as a shortcut to thinking, right? Like use it to shortcut other tasks, especially on an administrative level. Use it for, summarizing or bringing patterns to life, like bringing those insights from all the data. Because we know in HR, there's so much data, and we know that every role, there's so much that happens in the day to day, so much work that goes on that we forget that we do half the work that we've done. Our managers don't see a lot of the work that we've done. So it's a really great way of identifying those patterns or even gaps. Um, but as soon as you start using it to shortcut the thinking that the human should be doing, yeah, I think it always shows. And like you said, it does break trust. Now, you've talked in the past also about AI and how it can become a nightmare fuel, uh, especially when the data can be weak. What would you say, how would you relate that in the context of performance?
Crappy inputs, crappy outputs. If you are not doing the work to like write down the feedback, document the feedback, do it ongoing, and you're expecting that you'll get to like the end of the year and AI can help you write 8 months worth of performance feedback, and all you've been doing is filling it with like one liners about the employee, you're not going to get a good outcome. You're not going to get actionable or good feedback, in my opinion. I would love to be proven wrong. So if someone wants to test it for the next year and see, I'd be happy to see that. The other piece of AI, especially if you're just going to like a chat GPT or like a free account, whatever you have, there's a lot of bias in AI too. Already the performance review process has bias. Like we have studies that women are more likely to get feedback on personality traits than their actual work. And so if you think about AI in the external world that's like trained on everything that exists in the world, potentially if you're just going to that and grabbing whatever, it's going to be riddled with some sort of bias and it's probably going to be a bad output. So I think that answers the question.
Yeah, it makes me think of, again, going back to what we were saying earlier in the interview, that if your system, like at the core, if that's broken, AI is not gonna resolve that. It's not gonna make bad data or unclean data better. It's not gonna help you make better decisions. Ultimately, if the feedback isn't there, those conversations that should be happening aren't happening. Um, Expectations are not clear, and just the overall process isn't a good design system. AI is going to help you so far, but it's not going to resolve for all of those other broken pieces.
No, just imagine like your goal this year, like it's already a new year, and you're like, I am going to be the fittest I've ever been. I'm going to build a bunch of muscle. I'm going to do all these great things. And then you only eat junk food the whole year. It that would be really hard, I think, to build all the muscle that you'd wanna build by just eating processed junk food. Like, that is, I think, what doctors would also say. So just, like, think about your performance review that way. If you're feeding it the junk, the output is never gonna be as good as you want it to be, and that's why when we, like, can reframe our managers' minds around, "This is a partner to help you," you still have to do the work. Like, you still have to go to the gym and lift the weights to get the outcome, right? The managers still have to give ongoing feedback and document it and write it down in order for them to get to the end of the year and be able to leverage an AI effectively to surface all those trends. You can't just get to the end of the year and be like, "So AI, how did Hibba do this year?" It's not gonna tell you anything, it's gonna give you a generic response.
Yeah. It's not gonna do your manager will.
It's not gonna do your manager job for you. Everyone needs to hear that at least 6 times.
So, Heba, talk to me a little bit about how you've used AI in a more material way in your own organization.
So we've rolled out like an experiment where we let people like do their own experiments, figure out how they're using AI. We haven't mandated that everyone has to use AI, but in our last performance reviews, we did ask a question in our review. How are you leveraging AI in your day to day? Just to kind of like pressure test the waters. Unfortunately, the system I currently use doesn't have any sort of AI integration for like capturing ongoing feedback. I wish it did because it's managers are keeping their notes in Google Docs and then they're going to ChatGPT. We have like a company instance, so like they're not going to the public one. They're using our company instance to kind of summarize their feedback. And we told them like that's okay for you to do that, but we don't have it integrated in our system. It's just like a wish of mine. How have you used it?
So we've actually recently rolled out our own Workleap AI tool,
Cool.
and it's brand new, and we've been testing it out internally with our own reviews. So we actually do quarterly reviews. And while that can be time consuming, AI has definitely helped a lot on that aspect. I mean, I spoke to a lot of leaders internally, and they all had that feedback to give that it really did cut the time in half because it's pulling the data from everywhere. Like it's pulling data from Confluence pages, from Jira, where we track all of our tasks and projects, from Slack messages. Like you can even put in other sources of data where it's not actually pulling from automatically. So going back to what we were saying around like having the right data, so that it has like a really good idea of what it is that you do as an individual. um, that's been a big game changer because, like you said, we forget. Like, if you asked me what I did yesterday, I wouldn't be able to tell you. I know I did work, but like concretely, statistically, I kind of did. Oh,
I kind of did it.
yeah. So, in that regard, it's really great in pulling in a lot of that data and summarizing it, not only for the manager, but also for the individual. And as a manager, I'm thinking like, I don't want just individual team members like summaries, but I also want to know, like, as a team, what are the things that we accomplished? We've probably achieved a ton of goals, a lot of achievements, but like you forget at the end of the quarter, and it's usually a busy time at the end of every quarter,
Oh
right?
yeah.
So it breaks away from having to go back to all your notes. And what I find is great about that is that it helps managers have stronger arguments towards the evaluations and ratings that they have because now it's backed by concrete data. But also as an individual, you talked about um, going to those meetings prepared to showcase everything that you've achieved. It's your career, it's your growth, it's your pay. So you want to defend like, hey, these are the things that I've done differently this quarter or that I've done more of. So it really helps bring that to the forefront. It's like a great tool for individuals. And then, of course, from an HR perspective, it also helps to make sure that, again, you talked about analyzing that data, spotting those patterns, seeing where are gaps. It's not perfect by any means. We've only just rolled it out. And so, of course, the AI is getting to know all the different profiles, but it's one of those things where the more you use it, the better it gets. But just in that regard, it's been tremendously helpful. You can also use it to craft your messages. Again, it's not necessarily there to make, it's never there to make the decision to say this person is performing or not. But let's say you have some tough feedback that you want to give to someone, and it can help you kind of craft that message so that it's still motivating to the person, but it's clear. It's not sugarcoating it where the person's like, "Well, hold on. So I'm not meeting expected," because we've all done that
Oh my God. Yeah.
before, right? Like where we sandwich the
I
construction
hate the
so
sandwich
many
method.
layers of compliments and like, "You're great and you're this and you're so amazing." But this one little thing, and then you get to that rating part and they're like, "Oh, by the way, I said you're not meeting expectation." "Wait, but I thought you said I was great," right? So, how can I as a manager craft something that's motivating, but that's still also driving the message home clearly that this is an area I need you to improve? So it's also I've gotten feedback that it's been really helpful in that regard as well.
I can't wait. We need to like check in a year after you've done 4 quarters because I could not do a quarterly process right now. I really want one, but like it's too much of a lift on writing the reviews. Like we don't have that functionality. So it's like a big lift for us. But I was, like, thinking as you were talking, like, the 2 biggest pain points for managers is, like, writing the review and delivering the review, and the thing that I they're both equally as important, but I think the thing that might cause, like, a little more stress is the actual delivery piece. So imagine if you could leverage AI to, like, help you craft everything so that you actually have more time to really prepare yourself for that conversation, because it's one thing to read it. If you deliver it poorly, that's, like, game over. That's where, like, performance conversations go absolutely sideways when the person cannot deliver well. So I love this idea of having AI integrated, because then it can actually give the manager more time back to really mentally prepare to deliver a strong conversation.
Yeah. What I also love is that it also goes back to previous quarters, right? So oftentimes I'll say I have like certain development areas I want to work on.
Mhm.
But then I forget, like, by the next quarter, what was it that I said that I was gonna improve on, and,
Forget
like,
the next week.
if I'm not thinking about it, and if my manager is not,
Yeah.
also not thinking about, and I'm also thinking, yes, you're right, quarterly is a big lift, especially for people who have larger teams,
Yeah.
managers who have, like, 8 plus team members. So, again, you cannot keep track of everyone's strengths and, development areas. So this is a really great way to kind of look
Yeah.
past quarters to see, like, okay, where are we at? Where has the progress been, and where are some areas we still need to
Yeah.
look at? And then of course it's also tied into our engagement. So we use Office Vibe for that. We have the engagement scores. So again, for a manager and HR, as we partner together, I think there's a lot of correlation between engaged teams
Yep.
and performing
Yep.
sites. So again, AI helps sort of connect those dots for you that sometimes can be overwhelming with the amount of data that you have
Yeah.
to connect on your own. So we will definitely be keeping you in the loop as we continue using Workleap AI.
1 year from now, I'm gonna be like, "What did we learn? Let's sit back down. What should we do or should we not do?" Because I mean, if you're gonna learn over time, but that connection to data and performance is probably one of the most powerful things and assets an HR leader could have. Because I can say things like, "Oh, the more engaged the company is, the higher performance they will have." But you can actually prove that. You can literally say, "Here's how engaged our teams are. Oh, and let's overlay our team performance. Would you look at that?" The ones that have higher engagement are also getting higher performance ratings.
Yeah. And looking at what is it that those managers are modeling,
Yeah.
and how can we replicate that with other leaders? How can maybe they can also coach, not just me, but like as a peer, coach other managers, especially new managers, on what are some things that they do that can be adopted by everyone else.
I could geek out about this for hours. Like, you're just, like, sitting on a mountain full of data where I'd be like, I could spend 6 days in a row just dreaming of all the insights I could find. And that's, like, super powerful, and we're as HR leaders, like, we're moving into the future, like, one of our biggest capability areas is that, like, data and being able to explain how all the great things we're doing actually translate to business results, which is what, like, every board and every CEO wants to hear, like, "Why am I doing this, and does it actually help my business move forward?"
Yeah. So again, it can be a very powerful tool when it's used in the right way. So very excited for what's coming up on Workleap AI. All right. So that's all the questions we had for today. But as we wrap up, I'd love to know from you, Hiba, what's one small thing that you would advise our viewers today?
I love, like, a small takeaway, like, similar to you. I don't wanna, like, give someone a really big pipe dream and then set them up for failure. So one small thing I would say is start building the habit internally in your organization of giving continuous feedback, and make sure that your system actually has a way to capture that feedback, because you wanna build that muscle of doing it regularly, but you also wanna alleviate your, like, end of year performance fatigue or, like, biannual performance fatigue by having it already in your system too, to help your managers give even better feedback.
Love that. More feedback, everybody. Ewa, thank you so much for joining us today, and hope to have you back with us very soon.
Thank you.
Yes, the viewers, thank you so much for tuning in, and hope to speak to you all soon.